All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our second attempt at a virtual event. Our first one failed quite miserably because we used some really shoddy free platform that just glitched like crazy and we lost everyone. So we abandoned it and decided to use Zoom. So, we're here now. We know it's just like such a weird time, and nobody knows quite what's going on, and we're all probably not used to being, this isolated. And we've been here in the community, Tampa Bay mostly, but we've been all over the state, Florida, and have connections beyond. Um, you know, we're used to connecting with people, so it's hard for us too, and we just kind of want to be there for you guys. We want to keep engaging writers and readers, all of our friends. So we're trying out just a whole bunch of weird, literary programming virtually as best we possibly can. So we're going to be doing these library tours, these home library tours on every Sunday at 2 o'clock. So if anybody wanted to do this, next week or the week after, hit me up after this. Monday nights, we're going to be doing kind of an author talk, like an author Q&A. So tomorrow night, we're going to be speaking with St. Pete writer Aaron Greenwood. Thursday nights are going to be kind of a virtual version of the storytelling and prose open mics that we normally do here in St. Pete. And then kind of around that, we're just filling in with like an evening story time at 7 o'clock. Every 7 o'clock, every day at 7 o'clock, we'll just have a writer, reading from their work, straight up, very simple story time. And then we'll build some other fun programming in around that as well. Next Saturday morning, we're doing a virtual drag queen story hour. We're going to have a children's author join us as well. So please follow us if you don't already on Woodier now to keep up with all of the stuff that we're doing. So I'm going to get into, I'm going to get into our first tour. So Cyndi and Mark Vickers, I'll post their bio in here, but so I'll just give you a quick, they're both writers. Mark has a novel, The Toll Keeper, and Cyndi, also is a writer, and she's currently working with the Dalí Museum as their public programs associate. So I'll paste their bios in the little chat on the side in case you want to learn a little bit more about them. And I'm gonna mute myself and turn it over to them, and they'll show you their home library and talk a little bit about some of their books. So give me 1 second while I figure out how to do that gracefully. Grace Leslie. Okay, so there you go.
I think I have to unmute.
Is it working? Are we good? Yeah? Okay.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So hi, I'm Cyndi. Mark is behind the camera, so he's going to be showing you guys around. Come on in and look at our library. We have basically books all over our house, and but I'm going to show you what's in our office library, and excuse the condition of the office, and then I'll show you what's in our living room library. So follow me. All right, so ignore the rest of the office, but I'll show you first what we have. So in our office library, which is for Mark here, we have all of our business books. So he's going to show you all of that, including the air conditioner. So all of our business books, Mark does coding in Python and all of that stuff that I don't understand. And then he's got all of the business leadership books that he's used in the past, etc. And I try to organize by categories just so we can kind of sort of find things, but believe me, it is not a science. We also have some history books down there and things like that. Okay, so then if we turn here, we have some research books from Mark's novel that when he was writing The Toll Keeper. And whoa,
sorry,
there we go. And then down here We have our sort of science of mind and philosophy of mind books and things like that. And then over on the other side of the shelf, we have basically the elementary statistics and statistics workbooks and graphing calculators that I don't want to use. So that's our office library on that side. And then poor Mark. And then we have one other bookshelf in here that has our collection of the essential Marvel universe and all of that kind of, a few art books, moving down, some dance books, and then all our foreign language dictionaries, and moving down further, junk, and then then we have a little section on self-help here, so if you need any advice in your life. The next shelf, we have like a lot of field guides. In fact, I just used one the other day when we ran into a snake out at Sawgrass Lake, and I didn't know if it was a water moccasin or a black snake, but we think it was a water moccasin, and Mark saved me, so yay. And then more wilderness survival stuff on that shelf. Going down here, we have our odd novels shelf. So this is just random whatever here. Whoops, sorry. And more novels on the bottom. Sort of smaller paperbacks, some sci-fi. Mark reads a lot of sci-fi on the Kindle, so we don't buy a lot of sci-fi books, but these are some that we truly like. Golden Compass and Neil Gaiman and things like that. And then on the very bottom shelf, we have our classic drama, and then some more novels. One of my favorite collections of short stories, Bloodlines by Ernest Gaines, is always a keeper.
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about the books?
About the books.
So that's a good book Cyndi really loves. I love that book too. Is a series of short stories. I want to mention The Bear here, because a lot of people haven't read that book, but I do recommend it. It's a lovely book, and I was reading it at a time when my father is very ill, and kind of got me through that period. And if you haven't read The Underworld, I really, really think you should. Don DeLillo. Yeah. And it's a great, great novel, one of the great American novels. If you haven't seen it or read it, I recommend it.
And right here on the shelf, we have a rare copy of The Piano Tuner by Peter Meinke. So all of you Eckerd people out there, this is one of his collections that is not poetry. So if you've never read it, give it a whirl.
It's a very good book of short stories.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Okay, so let me get back in front. So follow me now out to the living room area, and we'll continue with our tour. This is our overspill area where we've run out of room, and I am loath to part with anything. So in our overspill area, we have philosophy, some odd kind of, I don't know, what do you call that, Mark? Is that anthropological, sort of anthropology things, and field guides? I don't know. And then in here we keep our more field guides, the bird books that we're always using and stuff like that. On the bottom, we have some local writers' work in here because we've started collecting that, kind of sprinkled with other novels. There's a Sweet Dream Baby, one of Sterling Watson's novels. Again, Eckerd people would know him. And then over here, we have more combinations of local authors and other books. Mark?
Oh, there's some lovely books here, like Middlesex. If you haven't read that novel, I really, really recommend it to you. And, well, they're all good, but I'm just going to pull that one out. Let's see, that's a good one. All right.
Okay. All right, so following me here. So this is kind of interesting, at least to me. So we have a lot of art books, and this one in particular is a book of Japanese woodcuts that is from Mark's mother. Had bought this probably in the 50s. I don't even know. But it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's the traditional Japanese, I can't remember what kind of binding they call this, but stab binding or something. And it's got just gorgeous photos, I can't tell or I'm sorry, illustrations of Japanese woodcuts and things. So there's that. One of the prize books that we have. It's just lovely. I don't think they make them like this anymore. If they do, we certainly can't afford to buy them. And then we inherited a whole bunch of different kinds of art books from Mark's aunt and also his mother. These things are amazing. These were series that they used to be able to like subscribe to them in the 50s and whatnot. And they come with all of these prints and from different artists, and it's just got information on the back. They're like so amazing. And we just have tons. Some are like that. Some of them are actual books, but this was a whole series from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And again, it's got information and huge prints. So they're everywhere. We love them. Okay, put this back. Moving on. So Mark is going to go and give you like an overview of our main library. I hope I'm not going too slow. We're going here. So this, do an overview, back up.
Overview.
Okay, overview of our shelf. Yes, it is IKEA, but you know, what can I say? So,
Go ahead.
okay, so in this, again, I just kind of try to categorize. So we have lots of classic fiction, and actually it also extends back there. It is double booked, so to speak. So we have that, and then down here we have like essays and books about, I don't know, The Outermost House, A Walk in the Woods about the Appalachian Trail. If you've never read that, I highly recommend.
It's a great book. It's really funny.
It's funny and wonderful. Also, I liked At the Tomb of the Inflatable Pig, which is all about Paraguay. Wow, it was fun to read.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Labrador and Cat books, because who doesn't have those?
Yeah, some of these books up here are books I inherited from my brother, who was 10 years older than I am, was a literature major. So when you see The Idiot, it's kind of a bad paperback copy, but it has a lot of sentimental value, and I read it after he read it. And so it's something that kind of connects the family, even though it's not an expensive book by any means, but it has sentimental value.
Yeah, and this book, The Good Earth, I just got it at a library sale, but the reason I picked it up is because I read it in 7th grade at Shorecrest, and it really made an impression on me, and I just always have, I can still remember vividly parts of that novel, so I just kind of wanted to have it in our collection, because I was like, oh yeah, that just left such a big impression on me. Okay, and down here we have, well, these are our son's games. He owns a game company, among other things, but anyway, so those are there, but behind them, Dusty, a lot more classic novels. Most of these are from us from college, so we've kept those great editions, the Scribners and whatnot.
Yeah, you could see Ulysses on the top there. I took a course.
Yes.
It was an independent study just on James Joyce, and so I still have this book, and it is really beat up, but it's back from my Eckerd College days.
Yeah, and so going down here, most of these, we have philosophy. Our son was a philosophy major at New College, so we inherited his books because, heck, he doesn't want to carry them around anymore. But I feel really smart that they're on the shelf, so we have that there. And then moving over, we just have a lot of, we have, again, sort of anthropological things. I adore Annals of the Former World, just because I like John McPhee anyway. I love his journalism and his essays, and so we have that.
He's a very good writer. He also is a very good teacher of writing. He has a good book out there that I have on my stand about writing for those of you who like to write. We also have quite a few books from Oliver Sacks, as you can see, who's a tremendous nonfiction writer. And my favorite physicist, Robert Feynman, he's here as well. Richard Feynman, excuse me. He's here as well. So yeah, we got him. And then, I don't know, this is more, Mark studied anthropology for a time, and so we have a lot of anthropology books down here, some keepers. Moving up, my favorite section, one of my favorite sections is the Tolkien, and you can see Mark's novel here, sagas of the Icelanders and things like that, my kind of nerd station. Yeah, The Hobbit and Redwall, which is actually a children's book, but I love it. I've taught it several times, and the kids always love it, and I really have fun teaching it. Then we, go ahead. I want to say the saga of the Icelanders for those of you who haven't read any of those, I recommend, even if you're not going to read up the whole sagas, it's worth reading individual sagas. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Anyway, and we have architecture, which I won't spend time on, but I really, really love the arts and crafts movement. So a lot of it has to do with that. And I love Philip Johnson, his glass houses, if you're not familiar with those. And then we just have a lot of novels. So I don't know, we probably don't want to spend too much time unless there's something you really want to say. One novel that we both really love, it's very small. It's by Joe Coomer. It's called The Flatland Fable. Highly recommended. It's just a small thing, but it's amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, we have 2 copies of it.
Joe Coomer is by no means a household name, but I really love this little book. I've read it several times.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Same thing with, I guess, yeah, he's got a pocket full of names, which I loved a lot. And so, yeah, he's really good. If you don't know him, check him out. Okay. And then we have our Shakespeare, you know, all things Shakespeare. I can't bear it apart with these antique volumes of single volumes of the plays. And then we also have a new compendium of William Shakespeare, and the one that Mark had that I think is from the late 1800s that I think, did you buy this used or something? And
yeah, so my mother's dog ate this up.
Hans took it. Hans took to it. Hans the dachshund.
Our dachshund Hans kind of ate it, but it's still beautiful inside.
It's still wonderful. So we keep it because who can part with that? And then, I don't know, more novels. You can just kind of scan this unless there's something you want to say.
Yeah, you know, Michael Chabon, a lot of you are familiar with him. The Yiddish Policeman's Union is a book I would definitely recommend. I mean, I recommend a lot of these. We love Richard Rousseau. I'm from New York. And Nobody's Fool is just a beautiful book. You might see him in the movie. So is Empire Falls.
Yeah, Empire Falls, if you've seen the movie, it pales in comparison to the book. Highly recommend it. More novels here. We're fans of Ann Tyler and me, Margaret Atwood. I adore Margaret Atwood. Nick Hornby. We don't have it on the shelf because we have it on Kindle, but Juliet Naked by Nick Hornby is just a wonderful novel. I highly recommend it.
They made that into a movie.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah. Anyway, more down here. Just more.
There's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell there. Okay, we got to keep going.
Got to keep going. Faster. Okay, so over here's our Zen. Enough said. Again, we have a ton of art books. A lot of them were inherited from Mark's mom. So we have this beautiful book back here on I think it's Chinese prints, and so that's back there. More novels, of course, going all the way down. Stopping at Zadie Smith. Our granddaughter is named specifically after Zadie Smith. Her name is Zadie, and because all of us in the family really like her. So yeah, so there's that. And this is just more, and now we're down to essays. As you can see, I'm a John McPhee fan. And so we have a lot of essays because I adore essays. So there's that.
H is for Hawk is a lovely nonfiction book that I highly recommend. Read that recently.
Yeah. And then down here is all our lit crit and anthologies from our Eckerd days. That sort of spills over to the next column. It's more of the same thing. You never know when you're going to need to look it up. And we've been fans for a long time of these short story anthologies, so we have a lot of those. And then short stories, I am a short story fan. Mark writes a lot of short stories, so I really love short stories, so we're kind of invested in that. More novels. These are novels we've recently gotten that we're reading, so I try to keep the newest ones in one place so we can kind of keep track of what we've read, except for this one, or not read. And on the top,
I want to say Salman Rushdie, that's his new novel. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read parts. I do recommend it. Golem and the Genie is a fantasy novel, but a very literary fantasy novel, and recommend that too.
And our son really, really recommends Wittgenstein's Mistress, which I have not read yet, but he definitely highly recommends it. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. This up here, all of these, actually Mark's mother is an artist, but in her 90s, she became a writer.
I want to illustrate.
So she, I don't
know. One of these.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Mark and I, or Mark, not Mark and me, she did all of the illustrations, and she wrote these books, and Mark had them bound for her, and we have a lot that aren't bound, but anyway. So she kind of used, you know, what all authors do, things that they know, places they've been, and yes, did a whole little series. So there you go. And then local authors, you might know, R.W. Marcus, Gail Massey, Aaron, Steph Post, Austin Scott Collins. So we keep trying to support local writers and keep their work. Yeah. So, okay, we're almost done. I swear to God. Okay. So the next section is under our TV.
Oh.
Yeah, under our TV, because you thought you were done. You're not. We have a lot of old books about like folk tales and things that Mark's Aunt Miriam got from library sales, and we love having them there. More of these art books from this collection. Again, these have prints inside and amazing information, and they're from Mark's mom, and I just love them. Could not afford to get them these days.
Where do you want to go?
And just then it moves into our poetry section. So we have a lot of poetry. Mark writes a lot of poetry. He's an amazing poet.
Wow.
Yes, he is. And I adore poetry, so that works out. So we have just a lot of poetry. All these shelves are poetry. Yeah, so yeah, tons of poetry. I'm running out of room again. And then down in the corner is my other secret favorite place, Beowulf and Homer. I love teaching that. I love reading it. And I just, yes, they have to stay on my shelves. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
In my book, The Toll Keeper, there are a lot of Beowulf allusions, which probably most people aren't getting, but they're there.
And then up here we have more like the Highwaymen and art books, and this is my little Paris pictured section where it's all like, yeah. So photography books. Last section, we're almost done. Yay. So yes, this is our art history and photography section because I'm a photographer and just, well, you know, art history. And so we have a lot of that. Photo books, and then just books about photographers and the books that they've done, and art history on the bottom as well. And this is Carlton Ward's Florida Wildlife Corridor Expedition. It's a great book if you haven't followed that. He's the Times reporter at one point. So yes, and I'm currently reading Stealing the Mystic Lamb. And I have recently discovered Wisława Szymborska. She's a Nobel Prize winner. She's a poet. This is prose pieces, but I also got a book of her poetry. And then there's more stuff in the bedrooms, but we won't show that to you. So, oh yeah, and Bob Dylan. Mark, you can tell the story.
No, but my mother asked me to get her this book. She's now in a long-term care facility, so we had to take it back, but she loves reading Bob Dylan's lyrics.
And mind you, she's 97.
She's 97.
So yeah, okay. So
You don't want to do the better?
no, I don't want to do the bedrooms.
Okay.
They've had enough.
Definitely.
So, oh, and more art books up here because you can't get enough. All right, I don't know where you are, but okay. Thank you for listening to us and going on our tour. Oh yeah, there was the top shelf, but we didn't get to that. That's okay. So yeah, all right, back to you, Tiffany. Mark, do you have anything else to say?
No. Good.
Okay, back to you, Tiffany. Does it work?
Guys, thank you so much. That was awesome. You a really amazing collection. Man, I love just such a variety too. I think that's awesome.
Thanks.
It's kind of like my house too. It's like we have all of our books just spread out room to room. Nothing, you know, they're not all in one space. So I'm going to jump into our next presenter. And I know some folks are in there in the chat room chatting a little bit during the tour too, so please feel free to chat. And I don't know if you have any questions for any of our presenters, maybe we can do that, take 5 minutes at the end of it and kind of, I don't know, throw any questions or comments that we might have out there. So anyway, I'm gonna get Leslie set up next, Leslie Salas. So she is she's Central Florida writer and editor. She's also a professor, humanities communication professor. She's the comics editor for Sweet. I'll post the rest of her bio in the side here, and I'm gonna switch over to her and let her kind of get going here. So give me 1 second. You're still muted. Wait, how do I unmute you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I'll mute myself though.
Okay. All right. So, hi. As Tiffany so graciously said, my name is Leslie. I work as a professor. I'm also a writer. I'm also the one with the 3-year-old kind of floating around everywhere. So bear with me while I go through this tour. So I'm going to actually step back a little bit so you can get like the full view of the bookshelves. So these bookshelves, there's actually a third one that's over here. They were made by my in-laws as a wedding gift to my husband and I. And so we're very, very excited about them. And so I wanted to show them off and also walk you through some of the books that are in there. Unfortunately, my entire collection of writing books is in my office in Daytona, which I can't get to right now because of pandemic. So you're going to get kind of a shortened version of my books. So with these bookshelves, we moved recently. And I used to have them organized by genre alphabetically and in chronological order. And then I was not in charge of moving my books. And so they are no longer in that order, which is a little bit sad and a little distressing, but it's okay. We make it work. So I'm going to turn my camera around so you can look at the books and not me. And hopefully, let's see if I can switch. There we go. Okay, so here are the bookshelves. And we're just going to kind of start in one corner and go from there. So starting over here, this is a thermometer, by the way. It's one of the Galileo thermometers. But I have several different types of books. You'll notice I have some literary works. I have The Hot Zone, which is probably really, really helpful right now. It's about Ebola, but it's still about containment during a pandemic. There's some Kurt Vonnegut up there. And there's also, we'll see some science books. My husband is an anthropology, or he was an anthropology major. Now he works in security. I have a whole lot of issues of Room, which is a wonderful literary journal that you can see. I highly recommend them. And there's some Bob Chakotchis. We have some local writers. This is Rita Soresi. And lots of issues of the Missouri Review, which is wonderful. We also have a lot of birding books. And a couple of like life books. And then I got a bunch of books from ALA, the American Library Association, while they were here in Florida. And so I've got a whole bunch of YA, which is wonderful. This book, Maya, is really important to me because my best friend is named Maya, and she was named after the character in this book. So that is really cool. And then there's also, what other books are there? Like there's The Odyssey. I've got this giant Andre Dumas that you can enjoy. And The Phantom Tollbooth, which is my favorite kids book ever. So it's all sorts of lovely. And then there is also, the books don't want to go back in the shelves, so I will collect them. I also have some fun anthologies. This is an anthology of Place, which is really beautiful, put out by Sundress, which is a wonderful publisher of stuff. I've got some fun books like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, but then I also have some like Gundam Wing technical manuals, because what else would we be except fun with stuff like that? I have David James Poisson, The Heaven of Animals. He's also a local writer from Orlando. And some Frank McCourt. All of the fun stuff is in the next. There's more Bob Chakotchis, Vanessa Blakesley, Train Shots. Vanessa's all over my bookshelves. I had her books together at one point and they got separated. This is a collection of things to do when we are bored that we made once a long time ago when we were bored. And I have this little fun thing. I promise I don't need help with it, but some of you might. So I have some like fun books that are mostly discussion things of whenever people are over. If we have people over and they're bored, we do those sorts of things. A collection of poetry stuff. This is from AWP. They usually give back issues away, so I made use of those. And some people over in with my husband. What else? I've got a whole bunch of back issues of the Florida Review because I used to work as an editor for them. And so they are really, really lovely. And what else do I have? They're all out of order, so I apologize. I have Bill Bryson also. Bill Bryson is one of my favorite humor authors in the whole world. If you haven't read that one or this one, which is about Australia, you should totally read them. They're amazing. And then there's, stuff about physics and gases. And math, because I was a physics major before I switched and I earned an MFA in creative writing. And then I've managed to inherit a whole bunch of National Geographics, which I'm really pleased about. And this is the one that I'm most proud of having the original. I'm giving it to her. So you might recognize this is the Afghani woman. They recently took another picture of her portrait and her eyes are no longer that beautiful color, but this is a really, really famous cover for Nat Geo, and I was delighted and ecstatic to find out that I had it in my collection, and I had no idea because I inherited those. I've also got some books on learning Japanese. Yes, she has been located and named. I don't know exactly where, but if you look up Nat Geo Afghani portrait, they did a whole story on her and what her life has been like since the time that this picture was taken. I can find her again. Since the time the picture was taken to now. So this was published in 1985. So it's been, several years. Then we've got a bunch of bird books, some style books that I inherited, which are fun. Some crafting books because I like to craft things. This is one of my favorite YA books in the whole world. It's called Made You Up by Francesca Zappia. This is an author. She wrote it while she was a teenager. It is YA. It's about being a teenager, but the protagonist is she's schizophrenic, and so she is like the definition of an unreliable narrator, and that's really cool. And her main kind of love interest, I guess, romantic interest, is somebody who has autism. So it's really, really neat, very very progressive book, and I really enjoyed reading it. It's called Made You Up by Francesca Zappia. There's another one, if I can find it, that's another YA book that I like to recommend a whole lot. There's some books on Buddhism, more birding books, some gifted books because I inherited a whole bunch of books from my former gifted teacher who was, she was a gifted teacher. I've got some books on The Legend of Zelda because that's one of my favorite things in the whole world. What else? I've got chemistry books, Sophie's World, which is an excellent way to learn about, excuse me, we've got a little toddler with a soccer ball. A great way of learning about philosophy. If you've ever been interested in learning about that, I recommend it. We've got some more local stuff. This is John Henry Fleming's Songs for the Deaf. Tony Swafford, which is nice. Excuse me, not right now, my love. And I'm running. Yes, you are running. Thank you. We've got the Next Great American Essay, which is a really great collection of essays going kind of through trends in nonfiction writing. We've got an anthology by Iris Wang, who used to be a local writer, and Donna Gerald. And I think that's pretty much it for this bookshelf. Yeah, my love. Do you need a kiss? Not right now, my love. All right, so thank you for your patience. We're going to go to the other bookshelf really quick while my little one is learning to get patient. So here's the other bookshelf. It's a match to the other ones. And we're actually going to start at the top. Over here where I have another Zelda book and a whole lot of Marvel comic books that I inherited from a friend who moved to Europe and she couldn't bring them with her. So they're mostly Iron Man and Deadpool, which I am perfectly okay with. Then moving down, we start with my comics collection. The graphic canon anthologies are stunning. They're beautiful. I highly recommend them, as well as pretty much any graphic novel on here. Habibi is beautiful. Basically, Craig Thompson stuff is great. This bookshelf is actually organized, so there's a bunch of fun stuff. If you like web comics, Ali Broch's Hyperbole and a Half is fantastic and amazing and super fun. Moon Cop might be one of my favorite things in the whole world. Tom Gauld specializes in like really silly literary humor, so he is fun to check out. Then over here, these are a little bit kind of younger graphic novel books. If you have a young reader and probably around middle grade or older, because I enjoyed this as an adult, Jeff Smith's Bone. It's huge, but it is amazing. And if you have somebody who likes to read graphic novels at home, I strongly recommend you give that to them. Okay, thank you. In the theme of fun and silly things, we have Paying for It, which is exactly what it sounds like. And it's actually really good. There's less sex in there than you would expect. Asterios Polyp is probably my favorite graphic novel in the whole world. So I would recommend it. It's one of the books that I read most recently that made me want to throw it across the room. So if you like that kind of experience, then I'd recommend that. If you want to make your own comics, Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, which is in my office, this is the sequel, Making Comics is Good, but so are these Madden Abel's Drawing Words and Writing Pictures and Mastering Comics. These books are really, really amazing. They're lots of fun. Then down here, we have, we're starting to get away from comics a little bit. There are still some fun stuff like Oh Joy Sex Toy, which is a fantastic website if you want to look for sex toy reviews. But this book is probably the prettiest book I own. And the reason why is because the whole book is a bunch of, the whole thing is like, it's a pop-up book. It's a giant pop-up book. So it walks through different things. So like this is an instrument and there are little strings there. I don't know if you can see them. And then, excuse you, no sir. Yeah, I have to keep this book away from small hands because I'm worried he might accidentally destroy it. See if I can get to the planetarium page. There's also, you can tell we don't open it very much because we are concerned about the toddler. I can't open it very well with one hand, so I apologize. Here we go. So here's another one. This is a speaker, so it actually shows you the shape of a speaker and how it works. So it's really awesome as an educational pop-up book. It's beautiful. It also, like here's a spirograph, and there are actual spirographs in there, and you can make your own. Like this book is super awesome. So, not right now. So this book is a planetarium, is one of the jewels of our collection. Then, not right now, my love. Then over here with the little orbiter are all of the nonfiction books, mostly about science and space. A couple of these are signed, so like Writing Rockets is by shuttle astronaut Mike Mullane, and he signed it. Ooh, if I can get the signature. So this is from, 2006, long time ago. And then, so these are fun. There's also, here's another Bill Bryson book about the short history of nearly everything. So if you like humor, he's wonderful. And then coming down here, we have some more classic stuff. There's The Martian by Andy Weir, but also we've got some Asimov, and these are I have some classic sci-fi out here like Douglas Adams. Hitchhiker's Guide is over here. And then there's also some new contemporary hotness for sci-fi. So we've got the Calculating Scars books, The Universe in Your Hand, The Wind-Up Girl, The Space Child's Mother Goose, which is all children's books or children's rhymes about space. So you can see a theme here with our family. And then all of these are really, really good sci-fi, like Ursula Le Guin is a classic. And here we have The Hunger Games. There's some Star Wars. I'm an Ahsoka fan, so that's good. We've got Tolkien, Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. Harry Potter is hanging out over here next to the Peter and the Starcatchers books. We've got Narnia, Wrinkle in Time. Wizard's First Rule, this is the Sword of Truth series, which was like the first major science fiction series that I really, really got into, so that's really important to me. I haven't read these yet. They're next on my to-do list, and they're in a bad spot. They're down here at the bottom. But these Children of Blood and Bone books, I'm really looking forward to them. And then I have this giant, giant Cosmo Field Guide book. Hiding behind it is Building Stories, which is a book that's in an entire box. It's amazing. And these are all nonfiction science books. Yes, it is a giant book, my love. Okay, so I'm almost done. I have one more collection of books to show you, and that's the kids' books. So for my 3-year-old, we have a whole lot of different books. We're starting to collect the Harry Potter collected editions. There's, excuse me, there's also these really beautiful books by Coleman, Armstrong, and then there's like a Lindbergh one, which are really, really beautiful and do a great job of showing kind of the beginnings of engineers. There's also Rosie Revere, engineer, and Ada Twist, scientist, for your kids that want to grow up to do science stuff and very into STEAM, so combining science, technology, engineering, and math with the arts. So we have, of course, like rocket science for babies and the ABCs of mathematics and the ABCs of science. So those are really important parts of our collection, but there's also like, you know, Elizabeth Barrett Browning's How Do I Love Thee in a contemporary format. So we like to mix things, and then Mo Williams is magnificent with his Elephant and Piggy books. What else is significant here? I've got this really, really old and tattered version of Grimm's Fairy Tales, which a family member found. It is illustrated, it's beautiful, it's falling apart. I'm trying to figure out how to kind of save it so that I can read it with my kid when he has a little bit of a larger attention span. Excuse me. And other books, these Dunria books, the Ollie books, are adorable and they're super cute. There's a little ninja book, which is fun. P for pterodactyl is magnificent for all sorts of frustrating words. Because everything, I'm sorry, the camera's backwards, but everything is, you know, not the way you expect it. So that's really, really fun. And trying to see if there's anything else. But those are pretty much all the books that we've got that are lots of fun. And thank you for being on this tour. I'm trying to turn myself around so you can see me. Let's see. All right. So that's pretty much a tour. Oh wait, I have one more tiny little section of books because we ran out of space. So there's like a small collection of books hiding in the dining room down here under the table over here. And a lot of these are, I threw them down here because I was trying to find space for them. And then they just kind of lived over here. But there's some cookbooks about being dairy free because my child and I are both allergic to dairy, but also about tying knots, Aikido, which I trained in for many, many years, some beauty stuff, and then knitting and crocheting stuff. I'm really into yarn work. So all of that stuff, and a lot of origami books, making things in jars, and a field guide. Oh gosh, they're all gonna fall. A field guide for the night sky because we have a couple of telescopes and we like to do some night watching. So that, I think, is the full tour of all the books that I have here. Doesn't count my books in my office, but at least these are the ones that we have here to kind of pull this out. And then in terms of what I'm reading, I just finished Ruth Foley's Dead Man's Float. It's a phenomenal poetry collection, so I recommend it. And next I am going to probably dive into this tiny little collection I got from AWP called Bikes in Space. It's science fiction, feminist science fiction that features bicycles. So that's what I'm reading. And then the next craft book is going to be Make It Mighty Ugly, which is by Kim Piper Worker. And so basically it's all about embracing the shitty first draft, I guess, if we want to use Anne Lamott's word. So that's it. Thank you so much for being along in my tour, and I'll pass it back to Miss Tiffany.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm definitely over here taking notes for, you know, books I want to read on you know, everybody's shelves so far. What? I couldn't read that. Hang on. Give me 1 second.
Major
Thank you.
Sophie's World. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, yeah. Yeah. I got some of those over there too, and I think I actually have copies of Sophie's World. I haven't read it.
Oh, it's so good.
Definitely the
It's so
art
good.
of more books than I've read because I just can't stop collecting them. So, all right, I'm gonna move over to Danny now. So I'm gonna mute you as I announced to you every little move I'm making. So Leslie, thank you so much.
Thank
And,
you.
thank your son for his patience. That was
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, he's doing. He needs a nap.
All right. So I'm gonna bring up Danny, and so Danny is an arts writer and editor and curator, and he's part of the team over at Creative Pinellas as well. And I'll post his whole bio on the side. So and Wordier is part of that incubator space over there, so we work with them pretty regularly on stuff, and we're part of that whole world there. So Danny's gonna share. There you go. Danny's gonna share. Now I need to. All right, you're unmuted. You should be good. Danny, can't hear you. Can anybody hear him? Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, it must have been my headphones.
All right.
All right, so as Tiffany mentioned, I work in the arts. I mostly work as a visual arts curator and an art critic, but also with me, all of my art books are not here. They're back in my office too. So that's why those are all missing. My tour, I think, will also be a lot shorter than most people's because I went through a bit of a minimalist phase for a little bit, and unfortunately, it took a toll on my my bookshelf. So I'm missing a lot of books, almost all of my classics, basically almost my entire collection from before 2 years ago. So most of the books I'll be showing you now are I pretty much bought them within the last 2 years. So I'm missing a lot of standard books that everybody should basically have in their library, but it is what it is. So I guess I'll go ahead and show you the bookshelf from far back here. I essentially have two bookshelves. Let's see. All right. So we'll go ahead and go through them. I don't have a whole lot of organization to them. Well, in a way, they're really carefully organized because they're really cheap bookshelves. And so essentially, I organize everything by weight distribution. Because as you might be able to see, these shelves are bending pretty badly. And so I guess I'm just planning for all of them to break at one time. But we'll deal with it when we get there. I'm mostly into literary fiction, contemporary fiction, and poetry. And so I haven't made any effort to get any of the books that I used to own. I've only been buying new books since then. So that's pretty much what I've been reading. I have put all of my heaviest books on the center shelf here. A book over here, Hernandez, in the distance. So I was writing a piece about bookstores. I'm sorry, this is hard. My camera's mirroring me here. So I essentially was doing a story on bookstores, and I went to Tombolo in St. Pete back when they were a pop-up. And Alsace suggested this book to me, and I read it and I loved it. And it's essentially what really got me back into reading again after I went through a dry spell after I sold a lot of my books. So it started with this book, and then essentially this whole library sort of climbed out of there. And so it's part of why I love bookshops so much, especially indie bookshops, because I really rely on other people's suggestions, on their knowledge. It's really helped me out from the get-go here. So I'll go ahead and back to my first bookshelf and sort of start from the top here. Right now, this is essentially my to-be-read pile here. It's not so big at the moment. It could be worse. Actually, this is a book I just recently finished. I have to mention this one. It's maybe my favorite book I've read so far this year, and I think it'll be one of my most favorites of all time. The Door, I'm going to mispronounce her name, I'm sure, Magda Sabo. It's essentially this girl, a teenage girl, she gets sent away to a boarding school during World War II, and it's just a wonderful coming of age story with some really high stakes also, so it's really exciting. So I've been told if you're into Harry Potter, but it's and historical fiction at the same time, it's essentially feels a lot like that. So I really, really love this book. It's one of my favorites I've read in a very, very long time. I'm not sure if you guys are into book box type clubs where you get a monthly or bi-monthly box of books. But Book of the Month Club is one that I've been doing. I received this book from there and several others. But another one that has been really awesome has been Boxwalla. And that's actually where I got the door from, with several others that have really been a lot of fun to get as surprises. I'm gonna go through a few here real briefly. Let's see. I held on to some of my Anne Sexton poetry books. As a teenager, somebody introduced Anne Sexton to me back when I was in high school, and it's really what sort of started just, my love of poetry, of just being able to read it. I really don't write it myself, but it's really, she's the one that really got me started on reading a lot of poetry. So I held on to these, even though I sold almost all of my other ones that I previously owned. Just a few other books lower on my shelf here. I believe I saw this book, Juventud, on another shelf earlier. It was really interesting book. But one book of poetry that I really loved recently that I just bought was Matthew Zapruder, Father's Day. I really like this for several reasons. Part of it is because I am now a father, and a few of the poems did touch on that, which is pretty great. Also, the current political climate, it felt like it touched on it with a lot of humanity. There's one poem in particular in here that I really would love for people to check out. You can find it online because I believe it was published in Poetry or another periodical. But it is, let's see here. I'm sorry, you could bear with me for a second because it's really a great poem. I'm gonna have to post it later because now I'm not finding it. I'm not gonna make you guys wait. Oh, here it is. It's a poem called Paul Ryan. It sort of touches on Paul Ryan as a politician, and it's weirdly touching, even though it's essentially about I guess. Well, you'll have to read it. It's very fascinating, just really a touching poem. The whole collection is really wonderful. Down to my bottom shelf here, Kintu. I believe I read this in 2018. It's one of my favorite novels I read in 2018, and really one of my favorite I've read in a very long time. It goes through generations of a family in Uganda, and how a curse essentially works its way through that family over hundreds of years. It's interesting how it sort of goes through a lot of Ugandan history, sort of bypassing colonialism, which is also very interesting. But it's also a time and a setting that I knew absolutely nothing about, which made the book even more fascinating. So if you have time to check out, this was a really great read. I'm gonna head on over to my other shelf here. So I have several more Book of the Month Club books. I haven't done any from them in a while, but it's been a fun collection to get. Several more books of poetry. Holy Moly, Carry Me was very interesting. I believe she's based in Appalachia, which but she's also sort of left-leaning, which also makes for a very, very interesting voice. And the poems just really resonated with me. I'm a visual arts person, so I really I don't have a lot of background on poetry, but I sort of judge a lot of it intuitively, mostly because I just enjoy it for my own pleasure. That was one that I really enjoyed quite a bit. Oh, one book that really surprised me that was Sam Pink. Sam Pink, The Garbage Times. It's a collection essentially of two novellas, and on the other side is White Ibis. So The Garbage Times starts off in Chicago, and he moves to Florida, and that's where White Ibis picks up. his depiction of Florida, it seems weirdly on point. It's the book is also very funny. It's a little bit gritty. It's also very touching and moving, and I don't know, just very authentic in a way that just really moved me. I absolutely love this. It's one of the few books I gave 5 stars on Goodreads that year. Just really enjoyed it quite a bit. A really fascinating other book that also touches on Florida is The Way of Florida. It's about the doomed Narvaez expedition, where hundreds of Spanish explorers came to Florida, landed here in the Bay Area, and the expedition was doomed to end up only 4 people surviving. It was interesting to think about what this area looked like before European settlers lived here and how harsh of a place our current home was back then. It was a really fascinating book. Let's see. Move just a little bit farther down. I want to mention Happiness as Such, Natalia Ginsburg. The wonderful Italian writer. She has a special skill for writing books that are epistolary books, where they're essentially letters back and forth to people. She has a really definite voice to her that just it makes it a pleasure to read all the time. So that was the second book I've read from hers. And just got a couple more I wanted to share. There's The Essentialist, which was it was a great book by Daniel Torday. A friend of mine. It's called a novella. I'm afraid I don't think they're actually publishing any more books, but essentially they publish novellas. They're generally all about this size. They fit in your back pocket perfectly. They're so much fun to bring around, and they were all awesome, really interesting books. Just a couple more books wanted to. I read this one last year, and the end of this book, for some reason, it really touched me. This is one of the only books I can remember actually really crying, like beyond weeping, crying when I got to the end of this book. It's just is a very interesting book about just how a woman navigates being a wife and a mother, especially as she ends up beginning to deal with polygamy as it begins to enter her marriage. It was a fascinating book. And my last one I wanted to share was The Besieged City by Clarice Lispector. Something about this book just really stuck with me. It really felt like a dream to me. It wasn't especially strange or surreal, but something about the tone just felt really dreamlike, and it was a really interesting book that stuck with me. So she has a way of writing as if she was somebody that just learned language for the first time very recently. Her metaphors, her comparisons, her word choice, very different than anybody I've ever read before. So a very interesting writer to read. But really, that's the majority of the books I wanted to share. And not a whole lot of variety anymore, but those are ones that I really especially enjoyed recently. So thanks for taking a look at my books, and I'll give it back to you, Tiffany.
Oh, I'm muted still. All right, I'm unmuted now. Guys, thank you so much, Danny, Cyndi, Mark, Leslie. That was awesome. That was really fun. I really wasn't quite sure how this would work. So you're all my guinea pigs, and you're all amazing, and you have fantastic collections. And I'm not sure if it makes me want to go get off this call and go write or read or both at the same time, if it's possible. So yeah, again, thank you for checking in. I'm gonna put this recording up on our YouTube page, and then also we'll be doing these tours every Sunday at 2 o'clock, and then basically every other night for the next couple of months, or however long all of this weirdness and distancing and isolation and quarantining lasts. We'll have something going on at 7 o'clock every evening, a variety of programming. So thank you, everybody, and stay safe, stay healthy, and I don't know, reach out if you need anything. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.